have a lot of projects on the go, and in this episode we're just going to be steaming on ahead with all of them. Aladino, are you ready? What are you starting with?
So these are all the new components that happened. What's the verb here?
Were made.
Were made? Oh, thank you. That I've given birth to.
Oh, okay. God.
So the pieces that were made. I'm pretty proud of that, actually.
Hello and welcome back to Magic Carpet 2, where the refit continues. Now the refit is continuing in a big way at the moment. We have so many projects open, and because we have so many projects on the go right now, I know it might kind of be hard to keep track. Even for us, it sometimes feels difficult to keep track. So we're going to start this episode with a bit of a where are we at tour. Now, most obviously, perhaps, the cockpit is open, and Aladino has done an amazing job actually creating new structures that will go in place in the cockpit. They're all down on the table at the moment, but we've got new beams here, we've got a new bulkhead here, big new beam here. That's slowly coming together. We're also thinking about the decks. This has been an ongoing story. Of course, one of the biggest things we did on this boat was replace almost half of the deck beams and all of the blocking which fits between each beam. That was a major story in our last trip to the boat. But this time we've been focusing on finalizing the installation and closing the decks back up. The decks are made with 2 layers of plywood. So we've got this first layer down already. The second layer is made and ready to go to epoxy on. And of course, we were going to do it the easy way, but now we've decided to do it a little bit of a harder way, which Aladino will explain later. But that's something we're hoping to get done pretty soon now. And you may remember from last week's episode that my parents visited and my dad helped us make templates for the bulwark material. Once the decks are closed, it's going to be pretty much time to start rebuilding these bulwarks, which is a big project and a big story with Cape George boats. The previous bulwark design is pretty much what caused us to have to replace all these deck beams and blocking. So we're going to be building it back up with synthetic materials, no wood, all really well sealed so that none of these problems happen again. But that particular project is still a little ways down the road. We sort of jumped the gun cutting out that bulwark material, but we wanted to do it when my parents came down with their van so that we could actually transport the material because my little car can't do it. So there we have it. And inside the boat, lots happening here as well. Pretty soon we want to fiberglass over the balsa on this area near the chart table and the quarter berth. And really quick recap, I know I've mentioned it many times, but this is for insulative purposes, not structural purposes. The boat design doesn't actually require a balsa core. My biggest project over the past few weeks has been scraping and sanding every last piece of paint and varnish off the interior of the boat. We're now pretty much ready in the saloon for paint and varnish to be reapplied. Just don't look at the deck head. We do want to paint and varnish, repaint and varnish up here one day, but that's a one-day mission. We're not getting to that quite yet. So this is ready for primer now, and that's a big focus. Pretty soon here, we want to get some primer on these walls. Up here in the head, we've actually already done that. We've got the first layer of primer on. The primer has been sanded. I'm going to put a second layer on, and then we're ready for paint. Same in these sort of lockers here, and next we got to put some primer on the bulkheads and slowly get ready for paint and reinstallation of all our furniture pieces. So that's the crash course, and now let's get back to work. There's a lot to do.
Oh, can it be that you're here with me? Let's start writing our own history.
We'll get started with the cockpit and with Aladino's very successful one-man beam production factory. The cockpit is getting new beams, new fiberglass, new plywood, new bulkheads, a new design. Almost everything is new, except for the cockpit well itself and a few beams on the starboard side. Here you see Aladino custom fitting some beams he laminated together using Alaska yellow cedar and epoxy. Yellow cedar is fantastic for its rot-resistant properties, its lightweight, and its tight grain. And although some people say they don't like the smell, I personally love it. It's warm and sharp and spiced, and as Aladino carefully fitted all the joints together using hand tools, the workshop was filled with the scent. Absolutely lovely.
Nothing but sunshine, sunshine and happiness are all that's around us now.
Making joints by hand is a slow process. You want to make sure that you don't remove too much material because it's hard to come back from a loose joint. So slowly, with a lot of adjustments and checks, you chisel your way closer to a nice, tightly fitted joint. It really impresses me watching Aladino do this because after taking a woodworking course myself in Port Townsend, I certainly respect the amount of skill it takes in order to create these joints.
I can't keep both feet on the ground. Let's just keep spinning, spinning, spinning. Just keep going round.
Only a few episodes ago, we had attacked this cockpit with a sawzall, ripping it all apart. And now we've already started creating nice joinery. I think we've hit our stride with this refit now. Things are happening quicker. We're getting in the groove. It feels great.
Just going round, going round. You've got me, you've got me, you've got me spinning in circles.
Oh man, this is crazy. Look at that. The epoxy is
First
steaming.
time you see that happening?
It is the first time I've seen that personally. So the epoxy is steaming. Tell us what that means, Dean.
Exothermic reaction. A big quantity of epoxy. The bigger
Wow,
the
look, that one
quantity,
too.
the more it heats itself up. So it is actually also a hazard. We were taught to always, if we have big leftovers, to place the cups not on the table and go do something else, but either on the concrete floor or outside, because they can self-combust.
Like this could actually turn into flame?
I've never seen it happen, but that's what you are taught in school.
Taught, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal. When you know that that could be a hazard, you should be working with smaller amounts, because it also can create air bubbles in it. But I just want to fill some gaps that won't be visible afterwards anymore, because we are recycling these old beams.
Aladino is filling these holes with epoxy because this beam is actually an old one. It used to support the bridge deck, but we removed it because the ends were rotten. And now we've chopped off the rotten ends and we're reusing them near the stern, where the boat is a bit narrower.
This is solid,
Oh,
but
wow.
not on the surroundings, because here's the bigger quantity, and as you know, the bigger the quantity, the faster it kicks, but not here, because it's a smaller quantity.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So things are coming along, but the reality is that the cockpit itself still looks a bit, well, sad.
To the naked reality, it just looks more unfinished without those pieces in place. But of course, I know they are very well underway, and they were dry fitted, so I am very happy actually about it. This side here, the quarter berth side, is good, so it is basically ready for decking. If it wasn't for all those other little tasks, we gotta sand the fiberglass, we gotta put a little bit of fiberglass tape where the rub rail bolts went through, we have to make the blocks, but those are steps for later on. I think now I am preparing for grinding. I've actually removed all the fiberglass bits that I could do with a chisel or with like a cat's paw kind of thing. Yeah, which is just nice. Get rid of everything that you can before grinding, because grinding a chunk of fiberglass takes a few steps and creates until it turns that whole bit into dust, which is a lot of dust. So I prefer when I can just rip it off. Well, just check it out. So this is where the old bulkhead was placed, and you can see that I was able to just tear the tabbing off, and here's the hole, so it won't require a lot of grinding.
If there's one thing I've learned about boat work, it's that 98% of the work happens almost behind the scenes, before the last 2% when everything gets painted and installed and finally feels finished. The cockpit still has a ways to go before that last 2%, but other parts of the boat are getting quite close.
I'm a jaded word in a traffic jam by singers with those fake accents, and your daddy's tire gets tighter as you grow. But where our hearts are from is late virgin snow, and someday we'll be gone. Someday we're gonna go.
These are the cockpit beams, and unlike all the other beams on the boat, they'll get finished with primer and paint.
So could you help my unbelief in dalliance upon a dream? Yeah, I love you.
I just had to step outside for a moment to talk to you guys. That primer is really good stuff, but man, is it powerful. You really need the respirator.
Alright, so now that the beams are coated and waiting to dry in the other room,
You're getting ready to do it in here.
Yes, it's all taped off. So we're doing the bulkheads,
Yeah.
first
awesome.
coat, and then second coat on the hull.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. You're doing that too? Nice.
I think so.
Of course, you might as well.
Yeah.
And I think the best technique is to actually start up here. So you can do the perimeter with the brush, and then you focus on this surface with the roller. So that means it leaves you with a wet edge about here. Then you actually do this with a brush, and then this area, and then you kind of blend, and then you can continue your way down.
So the idea is just to make sure that I'm always working with a wet edge, so I don't allow the paint to dry, so that I'm blending wet paint into dry paint.
Mostly that's important with paint, less so with this primer, but I would practice the technique and try to do it systematically like this. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Boatyard Sessions. I've decided to record a series of tunes at the moment, and I'm going to pepper them into the next few episodes. Since we're in a boatyard, I feel like starting with something sort of bluesy, and this is one I have played on the channel before, but I'm going to pull it out again. It's called Phil's Funky Grandma, and it's by Jaron Freeman Fox, an excellent Canadian fiddle player and multi-instrumentalist. Phil's funky grandma.
There is primer to check on in the head.
Oh, yes.
So I actually, well, Maya started it off, but then I did second coat on it on 3 bulkheads. So I did a little bit of a case study because I applied it in 3 different ways. And now we can see which one gives the most satisfying result. Oh, it's hard to see with the camera, but this wall here, this bulkhead, I applied it with a brush, but afterwards I passed over it with a spatula.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But it's very, like,
Well, because it is so
patchy,
thick.
though. Look.
Well, yeah, but it's a big quantity on it.
Okay.
It is so thick that's why I was curious. Because our bulkheads, the wood has a lot of grain in it, and we want it to be level in the end. That's why we're also using this high build primer, because we want it to be a flat, perfect surface in the end. Like you can see it here.
Yeah.
These are all ridges. So, of course, it will be revealed after the sanding. So I'm curious to see the results afterwards. But this one was with a spatula. This one here instead was only with the roller. 2 coats.
Yeah, you can see little pieces of foam from the roller stuck in the paint.
Yeah, they do break up after a while. It is nice and satisfying to apply with the roller, but I just feel like the coats are much thinner. The roller doesn't apply as much.
It's true.
And instead then the one who loads the most is when you just do it with a brush. And that's what I've done in this bulkhead here. So this is definitely, but it still shines through. It's soaked in as well.
The grain's not covered, though.
Almost though, I'm getting closer.
Well, so actually, I mean, really, technically what you've done here is a 3rd coat. Because I did actually do 2 coats on.
There was 1 coat here.
Here there was 1 coat, yes. But in these 2 rooms, on these 2, I did 2 coats already.
You did too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, I just continued and applied more coats because every time otherwise we have to sand it again. That's why I try to find the technique on how I can apply the most. So we don't have to do the prep work too many times.
I mean, after seeing the comparison, I would actually say that perhaps the spatula wall might yield the best.
I feel similar. Also in here, we got some more primer on.
Yeah.
And here we can call it done, actually.
I think we're calling it done.
Because first of all, not only because it's not visible, but also because there is no wood grain, so we don't care about filling the grain or anything like that.
Yeah.
We've done so with the fairing, with the putty, but the bulkheads, they are very visible, and it is part of the beauty of the boat, in our opinion at least. So we are trying to fill the ridges here. That's why we're trying to come up with the best method now.
Yeah.
Looks great already, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, it already looks much better than it did, so. Definitely lightens the space a lot, which I really like.
Totally.
And it provides this really beautiful contrast with the wood.
And soon on with the salon, so we can mix missions.
Yeah.
Applying primer, sanding primer.
All right, let's go. We got decks to close now, mister.
All right, let's go.
Let's do it.
But those decks to close will have to wait for the next episode. Thank you all so much for being here and for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please do give us a thumbs up, and we would love to hear from you in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and that way you'll get notified every Friday when we upload a new episode. An extra big thank you to our patrons for always going the extra mile to make sure that these episodes get produced. If you'd like to become a patron, you can do so for as little as $2 a month. It's totally up to you what you pay. And there are behind-the-scenes bonuses, including real-time updates every single Tuesday, which usually take the form of a little video that we throw together, which are patron exclusive. An extra big thanks to the folks whose names are now appearing on screen for always going the extra mile to make sure that Magic Carpet keeps being produced. We will see you all next Friday.